Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison. I want to welcome you to this session of Humanity Rising as we continue our program on apology. Apologies we need to receive, apologies we need to give, apologies not only to each other, but to our bodies, and most fundamentally to the earth. Today, we want to delve into the area of the suppression of spirituality in the North American continent as the United States swept westward and committed essentially genocide against the Native American populations. And in addition to incarceration in their reservations and massacres and all the things that we've been hearing about, there was a very systematic suppression of the spirituality that the Native Americans had developed over thousands of years. It's a spirituality that we are returning to as the world teeters on the precipice of self-destruction. And yet it's a spirituality that has gone through trials and tribulations that are almost unspeakable when one looks at them in the clear light of day. So we're going to do that in our session on Humanity Rising in a few minutes. Before we do, let us just pause, as we always do, to engage in some conscious breathing. In a moment, you'll hear the sound of a bell. When you hear that sound, just begin to breathe slowly in. Then you'll hear the next bell and then exhale. You'll be breathing in for about 5.5 seconds. You'll be breathing out for about 5.5 seconds. And we're going to take 10 breaths together. This is the breath of the mother. The number 5 has been associated with the divine feminine for thousands of years. And so when we breathe in, as we do each day on Humanity Rising, we're breathing in the mother and we're breathing out the mother. And we're establishing coherence as a single community being held by the mother. So thank you, everyone. Let us breathe together. Thank you, everyone. It's always so good to breathe as one in the spirit of what Plotinus observed several thousand years ago, that the whole universe breathes as one. The way I would like to introduce our session today is just to remind ourselves that from the landing of Columbus in October of 1492 for the next century, the conquest of the Western Hemisphere meant that 90% of all the indigenous peoples in North America, Central America, and South America were killed off. It's the largest genocide in the history of the world, as far as we know. Every imaginable technique was utilized, from massacres to the spreading intentionally of diseases for which the native populations had no immune response. So the Native Americans and the indigenous peoples that we experience today are literally a remnant of what was. And over the 500 years of oppression, this remnant has not only survived, but has remembered and reconnected generation by generation to the eternal truths that they learned when they were in the pre-Columbian times and are now, as we've mentioned many, many times on Humanity Rising, emerging as the wisdom keepers of our time. So it's within this spirit that I want to introduce Jerry Patchen, who's a Native American attorney that lives and has worked for over 50 years as a trial lawyer in Houston, Texas. He's won cases in over 25 states and represented all kinds of people. And in particular, what we want to focus in today is what Jerry Patchen has done for the Native American Church, which was protecting and nurturing the spirituality of the Peyote cult that was so powerfully present among Native Americans in certain parts of North America, particularly in the Southwest. So Jerry is going to tell us that story. And I've had the real pleasure and privilege of getting to know Jerry over the last several months. We've had many deep conversations. I've seen a number of his YouTubes. So fasten your safety belts. And Jerry, thank you so much for everything that you've done to protect a spirituality from which the world so desperately now needs to learn for our time. So I turn the program over to you with deep thanks and a warm welcome.
Thank you, Jim. And I must insist that what I have received from Native American people and my involvement with them, which is foundational, is my contribution is minor considering the gifts I've received. Suppression of Native American spirituality has had a dramatic impact on the lives of Native Americans. The courageous and historical struggle of North American Indians to engage in their ancient ceremonial rituals, such as the sun dance, ghost dance, and their use of their sacrament peyote is unprecedented in American culture. It is the case that without the Native American indomitable spirit and arduous battles and legal battles extending over 4 centuries, and yet today, in fact, there would be no legal use of a Schedule I controlled substance in the United States. As an attorney representing the Native American Church for 5 decades, now I am not Native American. I am a non-Indian. I have been involved integrally in advancing the religious freedom rights of Native American Indians, and particularly the legal status of peyote. I have done this pro bono, paid my own expenses to protect and secure the NAC, Native American Church. NAC is the acronym, so that they could continue their prayer services or peyote meetings. I've fought many battles throughout the United States involving peyote and advancing the rights of Native American religious freedom, excuse me, in the U.S. Congress. South Texas, here's a little background. South Texas is the only source of peyote, the only location where it grows in abundance in the United States. There's an abundance in Mexico. Peyote exists along the Bardas Escarpment, which is a narrow band in South Texas extending north and south. On the north, Laredo, and on the south, the Rio Grande River. Here's a nice peyote specimen in bloom. I also represent the peyote distributors that are licensed by the Drug Enforcement Administration to sell and harvest peyote to members of the NAC that are enrolled with federally recognized tribes and have a 25% blood quantum. I was fortunate in 2005, the Texas State Bar awarded me a Lifetime Achievement Award for the services to Native Americans. I've got rather extensive knowledge taught to me by Native Americans, Native American elders. I've been entrusted with records, photo archives by the elders, and through my law practice, I'm familiar with the statutes, legal proceedings, contribution by ethnologists, ethnobotanists, anthropologists, and academics from related fields to the victory of the NAC. And I have served and continue to serve as an officer in the NAC. My wife, Linda, and I, along with our children, participated in peyote meetings with the fabled, fearless, horse riding, war bonnet wearing, buffalo hunting Indian warriors of the Great Plains, east of the Rockies, the Cheyenne. The Plains Indians' wisdom and traditions were passed orally from grandparents to grandchildren. We were privileged and fortunate to join in peyote meetings, prayer services, NAC prayer services with Indian elders whose grandfathers and grandmothers survived the genocide. Now, a lot of Indians, they don't like that word genocide. They say, we're still here. But in fact, in truth, it was a horrible and terrible genocide. But we set up with the Indians that were removed from the Great Plains. There's a whole nother story in the East. But we were privileged to sit up with the Southern Plains Indians primarily, who were in direct lineage with the experiences and wisdom their grandfathers that taught them. The free-ranging, free-spirited Apache, Comanche, Kiowa, Cheyenne, Arapaho, who were the Southern Plains Indians that pioneered and developed the peyote ceremonial ritual in its present form, and instrumental in establishing the NAC in Oklahoma. We were invited, Linda and I were invited, I like to tell you that whole story, but we don't have time, by Rutherford White Star Lone Man. He was an amazing Southern Arapaho Indian road chief. That's like a priest. He would lead these prayer services. He was the grandson of Old Man Lone Man, who escaped the genocide and was removed to Oklahoma and passed his wisdom on to Rutherford. During Rutherford's birth, his mother consumed peyote in an old frame house near Concho, Oklahoma, and a practice sometimes used by Indian women during labor. Old Man Lone Man had set up a teepee, erected a teepee near the house, and old Arapaho chiefs gathered in the peyote meeting. Immediately after Rutherford was born, he was taken inside the teepee and he was passed around the circle to all the old chiefs. And Rutherford told me each of them put something in me. Linda and I began to pilgrimage to attend NAC prayer services, often with Rutherford, but other road chiefs, and pilgrim traveling. Indians love to travel. In itself, pilgrimage is a powerful process. There's a photo of Linda and I coming out of the teepee. Oh gosh, back in the 70s, we were kids. We had many glorious and developed many close and loving relationships with Indians from many tribes, especially Rutherford, who adopted me Indian way as his son. Rutherford could create an atmosphere of love in the teepee that was palatable. You could feel it. You could cut it. Love is an important principle in the NAC. Peyote produces a profound connection and appreciation for those around you, nature, all of life, and the environment. Peyote produces an astonishing mental clarity and visions through all our senses. Peyote fosters a deep and meaningful self-examination with a sincere desire and motivation for self-correction and improvement. Peyote is a mirror to your soul. The ecstatic experiences that reliably occur in peyote meetings, fostered by the drumming, the gourd, the colors, the fire, the aromatic cedar. This sacred process is unimaginable. Linda and I attended a beautiful peyote meeting outside Santa Fe that Rutherford led. Rutherford doctored in the teepee with a red-tailed hawk thing. The Indians used these feathers with the cedar from the fire to doctor. Here's a water bird fan. All the beadwork on this is exquisite. Anthony Davis, no Pawnee. If we have enough time, you'll get to meet him. He's gone now, but you get to meet his image and hear about it. But masterful feather maker. Here's Linda's fan. Just a beautiful, you know, just beautiful. Oh, hello, Linda. She's watching this. Anyway, Rutherford used his grandfather, Old Man Lone Man. Old Man Lone Man was the last Indian to pierce in the Southern Arapaho Sundance before it went back. Now they have it with the Northern Arapahoes up in Wind River, Oklahoma. But Old Man Lone Man was a Sundance chief, last Southern Arapaho to pierce. And they don't pierce anymore, the Arapahoes don't, in Oklahoma. But he had Rutherford follow a red-tailed hawk for 3 months. The direction that hawk flew, the way he turned his head, the calls he made, Rutherford learned to communicate with and connect his soul with that red-tailed hawk. He merged with the spirit of that hawk, and he would use that spirit through his in this Santa Fe meeting. He was doctoring an elderly, sick Asian lady with his red-tailed fan. She was brought in late on the teepee. The next morning at early light, Rutherford was holding his staff, which represented the old bow, his staff and his gourd, and he sat silent. He looked at the fire and he said, "It's all right there. It's very simple. It's all right there." All those that have gone on and all those that are coming, it's all very simple, and it's all right there. Rutherford communicated beyond the words something, transmitted something ineffable to me. He always told me, in the teepee, we talk about life, this process of life. Peyote meetings, Native American church prayer services must be approached in a serious and reverent way. Can you imagine riding on the plains, feeling a connection and a communication with the spirit of birds, animals, plants, trees, air, fire, wind, and water on a level that is as clear as the spoken word? Can you imagine having your food supply, millions of buffalo purposefully slaughtered? They would slaughter, you see these buffalo skulls, they would slaughter buffalo, leave their bodies to rot, take their heads, send them back east for fertilizer. Can you imagine having your family elders, men, women, and children killed, decimated, annihilated through massacre, with the surviving Indians removed from their homelands and confined on reservations by the U.S. cavalry parading under the banner of God-ordained manifest destiny. Can you imagine having your church raided and being arrested for practicing your religion? The Native Americans sit cross-legged on the ground in their teepee church. Yeah, we got a NACTP here. There it is. Let's see. This ancient archetypal pattern of sitting on the ground and connecting the earth with the earth can be profound. Can you imagine Colonel Shivington, an American Civil War hero and Methodist pastor who led the 3rd Colorado Cavalry in 1864, commanding 800 soldiers, destroying a peaceful village of Cheyenne and Arapaho people at Sun Creek in southeast Colorado Territory, murdering 600 Native Americans, 2/3 of them. Men are off hunting. 2/3 of them, women and children, mutilating them, scalping them, taking body parts, including unborn fetuses, as trophies, cutting off the breasts of Indian women for tobacco pouches, cutting out the female genitalia to use as hat bands, all for gold, all for the Colorado gold, where under treaty, the Cheyenne Arapahoes had rights to that land. Now I'm getting into the massacres. That's Southern Arapaho elder Henrietta Mann. That's her topic. She's 88. She became ill and couldn't participate today. She's amazing. I'm not worthy to stand in her shadow. But she's going to be back. She's going to be available. Don't miss Henrietta Mann. You know, in this area of massacre, the book, I'd like to recommend a book, Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. It is the seminal, it's by D. Brown. That's Quanah Parker on the cover there, old Comanche. This book should be required reading in every high school. But you know, with this CRT critical race theory, some states and school boards are burning books so that our children do not feel uncomfortable for things they have no responsibility for as they sit in their schools that are on stolen Native American land. Can you imagine having your children taken from your home? You're on the reservation, they come in, they take your kids, essentially kidnapping them, and they are taken to Indian boarding schools and held captive, and they're stripped of their native dress. Their hair is cut off. They're severely beaten for speaking their own language. They are sexually molested. They're dying and they're buried in these boarding house cemeteries without notification to their parents. I was recently involved supporting a mission to go to Carlisle and to recover a young Friday boy. I wish I could tell you about the Fridays, Northern Arapahoes, but let's move to the law. Let's move to the law. The suppression of peyote in the Americas. The use of peyote is the oldest religious practice on the North American continent. Its ancient roots are lost in time. The Whitty Museum in San Antonio possesses 3 archaeological specimens of peyote that are radioactive, dated 6,000 years old, 4,000 years BC. These peyote specimens were discovered in an indigenous hunter-gatherer context in Shulma Cave in the lower Pecos region of Texas near the confluence of the Rio Grande and the Pecos River. There are rock art petroglyphs with peyote motifs in this area that have been dated to the same period. Gas chronography identified mescaline in the Shulma Cave peyote. That identification establishes that Native American recognized the psycho-spiritual and pharmacological healing properties of peyote 6,000 years ago. The evidence actually suggests that Native American people have continuously used peyote for 6,000 years. For over 10,000 years. From the era of the Pleistocene Paleo-Indian hunters of mastodons to the present day. A Spanish Francisco missionary and ethnographer traveled Mexico in 1529, and he wrote about, that's the earliest reference written of peyote. It was published in Mexico City in 1591. In 1577, Fernando Hernandez studied plants used by the Aztecs, which included peyote, which is the Aztec word for peyote. When the Spanish conquistadors arrived in Mexico in the 15th and 16th century, the Aztec, Huichol, Tarahumara, and Zacateco and other Indians had ceremonial rites that surrounded the use of peyote. Let's talk about the prosecution of peyote in New Spain. Spanish imperialism included supplanting indigenous spirituality with Catholicism. Mexico and peyote did not escape the Inquisition. Christianization Christianization, you know what I mean, making you a Christian, were forced at the point of the sword under the authority of the Inquisitor General. Plants used, and I see there's a hand on my screen, I guess I'm not sure what that means. Hopefully it's all good. But plants used in indigenous ceremonial rituals were condemned. In 1620, the inquisitors issued an edict declaring peyote a heretical perversity opposed to the purity and integrity of our Catholic faith. Further, peyote was characterized as the intervention of the devil, the real author of this vice. The inquisitors proclaimed, "Our duty imposes on us the obligation to stop this vice and to repair the great harm and offense to our God and Lord resulting from this practice." Consequently, peyote was the first psycho-spiritual ethnobotanical substance prohibited by law and punished by imprisonment in the Americas. The Catholic Church enforced this edict for over 2 centuries. Historical church archives record many prosecutions of Native Americans in 45 locations in North America. Now, the prosecution of Indians for peyote, of course, extended to the United States. Indians in the U.S. were also prosecuted. The BIA formed, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, Federal Bureau of Indian Affairs, was formed in 1824, and through the 1830s, it was strongly influenced by missionary societies. For over 5 decades, federal officials on reservations and in Washington, D.C., were appointed by Christian missionary groups. Although the peyote religion, frankly, out of necessity, adopted Christian theology combined with Indian spiritual practices, Christian missionaries began to seek criminalization of peyote, and the first law was enacted in Oklahoma in 1899. Other states such as Nevada in 1913, Colorado in 1917, and others followed suit. The Oklahoma anti-peyote law was appealed in 1908 after a delegation of Indian chiefs. I have a photo of that delegation, but I'm not going to share it. But the eloquent Comanche chief, Quanah Parker, testified before the Medical Committee of Oklahoma, of the Oklahoma Constitution Convention in 1907, and Quanah was the most influential and instrumental Indian in the creation, development, and spread of the peyote ritual and ceremony in Oklahoma. Because a senator objected because of his constituency. Oh, by the way, Indians were not considered persons. Standing Bear, a Ponca chief. It wasn't until 1879 that Indians were recognized as people. You know the old story, the Indian proclaiming to his antagonist, I'm a good Indian, and the response, the only good Indian is a dead Indian. The era of prohibition was raging through the American culture, And in 1906, Congress passed a law against the sale of intoxicating liquor to Indians and appointed, they had a special appropriation to prosecute violators. President Theodore Roosevelt commissioned a well-known prohibitionist zealot, William Johnson, as a special officer to enforce prohibition in Indian country, and armed him with 100 deputies. The suppression of peyote became closely involved with prohibition against alcohol. Johnson considered alcohol, quote, dry whiskey, and fanatically raided peyote meetings, arrested and caused the prosecution of many peyoteists who were jailed for their religious devotion. Okay, let's talk about the establishment of the NAC in Oklahoma. The Carrizo, which were, the Rio Grande River was in Mexico. There was no division, but the Carrizos and the Lipan Apaches, the Mescalero Apaches, the Kiowas and the Tonkawas, they all ranged north and south of what is now Texas and Mexico. The Apaches were in contact with Indian tribes, and they brought peyote to the Apaches brought peyote to their Kiowa allies, who shared it with the Comanches, who passed it on to the Cheyenne and Arapaho, and the peyote ceremonial ritual then spread to all of the Southern Plains Indians, and ultimately it spread from Oklahoma to the Northern Plains, where Indians such as the Sioux are and other northern tribes, and then later over to Four Corners area, New Mexico, and Colorado, Utah, and Arizona, where the Navajos are. And Article 2 of their charter combines Christianity with Indian spirituality, and it declares the purpose of the church is to foster and promote the religious beliefs of several tribes of Indiana and the state of Oklahoma in the Christian religion with the practice of the Peyote sacrament. And in 1912, the BIA Commission began to lobby for a federal law against peyote. The U.S. House held extensive committee hearings. James Mooney, an ethnologist from the Smithsonian, there's old Mooney, Bureau, led the defense of peyote. Mooney had gone among the Kiowa Indians in Oklahoma and studied their pictorial calendar. Their calendar, interestingly, had parrots and monkeys on it. That's how far south in the Southern Plains the Kiowas range. Mooney, the ethnologist, spent many months with the Southern Plains Indians on reservations in Mexico, and he observed and participated in several peyote meetings. Mooney testified peyote had done much good and was a sincere religion. There was fierce opposition from the prohibitionists. The bill to outlaw peyote was passed by the House of Representatives, but was rejected in the Senate because a senator from Oklahoma was under pressure from his Indian constituencies and persuaded his colleagues to vote against it. Then a bitter conflict occurred between the BIA and the American and the Smithsonian, the Bureau of American Ethnology, as a result of Mooney supporting the Indians during the 1918. Now, their church charter was 1918. I got a copy of that original charter. The BIA accused the ethnologists of encouraging Indians to maintain old, heathenish, unhealthy, uncivilized customs so that scientists could write books, take pictures, and thus exploit the Indians with cheap publicity while doing nothing to help them become civilized. Mooney defended himself and denounced these accusations as absolute falsehoods. Upon his return to the Kiowa Reservation in Oklahoma, the Commissioner of Indian Affairs directed the Smithsonian to recall Mooney on the grounds that he was interfering with the administration of the BIA, had participated in peyote ceremonies, and had assisted the Indians in incorporating their religion as the Native American church there in Oklahoma in 1918. To the shame, the absolute shame of the Bureau of American Ethnology and the Smithsonian, Mooney was recalled and never again allowed to return to Oklahoma to continue his study of peyote. He died later from a heart attack. Some say a broken heart. Frank Takes Gun. Frank Takes Gun. Do we have any? Oh, there's old Frank Takes Gun. Was the Johnny Appleseed of the Native American church. There he is in the teepee. That's interestingly, this is up in Saskatchewan, Canada. But the old man adopted me Indian way, just like Rutherford, as his son. No single individual achieved as much for the NAC as Frank Takes Gun. A Crow Indian on the Montana reservations, his skill in creating organizational structure, chartering new NAC chapters in many states, bringing court cases, and leading the passage of legislation in Indian states in the U.S. Congress was amazing and unmatched. The long odyssey of Frank Takes Gun. Let me tell you how he got that name, Frank Takes Gun. When they are enrolling these Crow Indians up in Montana, the federal agent that's doing these, enrolling these individuals, the Crow name, in Crow, his name meant absolute victory. The Crow translator tried to explain to the agent that's enrolling these Indians the name of absolute victory of Frank Takes Gun's family. The translator, the agent couldn't get it. Finally, the translator told him, "Takes gun." It's like when you disarm someone, you take their gun. You got absolute victory. But out among the Navajo, there's a lot of Yazzie. Who's that? Oh, that's Yazzie. It means my son. So a lot of them got named Yazzie. There's a lot of Yazzie families out there. All right, but his long odyssey began on the Crow Reservation. He was with his family, went to a peyote meeting. And after the peyote meeting, he was 16 years old. After the peyote meeting, the U.S. Marshals arrived and they arrested the road chief that ran the meeting, Big Sheep. And the women were crying. They were, Holy Creator, we prayed all night for something good. You know, great mystery. We're looking for something good, and they come and they take Big Sheep away. What we don't understand, what can we do? Well, the old men gather, and Frank Takes Gun was the only one that could speak English. They instructed this 16-year-old boy to get in a horse-drawn buckboard with Big Sheep's wife, go where they had taken Big Sheep, and bring him back home. As if by miracle, when Takes Gun, the young teenager, talked to the marshals, they released Big Sheep. Takes Gun and his wife brought him back home. Ultimately, he was charged and prosecuted with peyote. I was privileged to know Takes Gun in the 80s. I arranged for him to fly from Montana to Laredo and picked him up at the airport. I've got a great story about what happened as he was explaining to me what happened. I'd love to share it, but I'm running. I don't mean to take up time, but I had a marvelous experience just driving over to Laredo, which when Big Sheep took him down to Peyote Gardens as a reward. And back in that day, it was just a wagon, just an old dirt single lane wagon road, and some of those old Model Ts were getting along. But I had a marvelous experience with just on that road and him explaining what they did when they got down there, talking to me about how they put up a TP meeting, and all of a sudden I'm there. I'm in that meeting. I'm watching it as he describes it. And I'm driving that far. And then I kind of come back to this reality. And I told Takes Gun what happened. He just looked at me and he pointed to his right temple. And he says, this mind is a powerful thing. Takes Gun was a truly great man in 1944. There he is in the upper right-hand corner. Handsome Crow Indian. And this is 1944. He was vice president of the NAC. Mac Hay, the white-haired man on the first row, there's Alfred Wilson, handsome guy standing next to him. They're both Cheyenne. There's Kiowa and Oto in the back, but Mac Hay was the first signature on the 1918 charter. And though Takes Gun had no legal training, he was a brilliant legal strategist. Very few attorneys in any area of law achieved what he did with state and federal litigation. His victories were amazing. He defeated the anti-peyote law in 1937 that during the Franklin Roosevelt administration by presenting anthropologists that testified to Congress. Peyote is not a habit-forming drug, and it's used as a religious sacrament. And by this time, the Christian missionaries had been pretty well supplanted in the BIA. Oh gosh, his advocacy resulted in the legalization of peyote in Colorado, New Mexico, Utah, North Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, various other Indian country states. or various other states didn't have an anti-peyote law. Okay. Going fast here and losing my place. The peyote in 1965, that's during the drug war beginning in the 60s, was initially not enforced against Indians. And in 1971, the Federal Code of Regulations put a specific exemption in for the NAC, and it's I won't read that. All right, let's go to Exhibit 15. This is the Oliver's Navajo family out of Arizona. There she is, holding the charter that Frank takes gun there on the left of the screen, that he chartered. The Olivers had been put in jail several times, and I was honored to serve with Frank Takes Gun on the Texas charter. There's Rutherford. There I am. There's old Frank Takes Gun. He's put on a few years there, as you can tell. There's Jerry Itzity, a good Navajo. There's Rutherford Lone Man with the purple shirt, Arapaho. But the Mary Attica case in Arizona in 1960 was the premier first important legal case where Judge Yale McPhail declared the use of peyote is essential to the existence of the peyote religion. Without the practice of the religion would be effectively prevented. And from the foregoing, it follows, first, the only significant use made of peyote in connection with Indian rights of a bona fide religious nature or for medicinal purposes. There are no harmful after effects for the use of peyote. It is not a narcotic. It is not habit forming. The practical effect of the statute outlawing its use is to prevent worships by the members of the Native American Church who believe peyote, the peyote plant to be of divine origin and bear a similar relationship to the Indians, most of whom can't read, as does the Holy Bible to the white men. There were a few progressive Native Americans, judges. Okay, here's old Frank Takes Gun out in San Bernardino, where there were three Navajos, one of them isn't present here. They had a small hogan. They were laying railroad tracks and had a small hogan, and they were arrested for possession of peyote. There's old Frank Takes Gun at the San Bernardino courthouse holding the paper there. And the trial judge convicted them, but it was appealed to the California Supreme Court. And I think the Supreme Court ruling has some of the most beautiful language. The California Supreme Court, you can pull up 18, Gabriella. The California Supreme Court accepted the opinions of scientists, including Omer Stewart. He taught at the University of Colorado. He has a very interesting, somewhat technical, he wasn't a peyote man, of the peyote religion. It's a study, but the court rejected. The government was saying that the Attorney General Peyote obstructs enlightenment and shackles Indians to primitive conditions. In persuasive language, the California Supreme Court reversed throughout the convictions of the three Navajo gentlemen and concluded the right of religious expression embodies a precious heritage of our history in a mass society which presses at every point toward conformity. The protection of a self-expression, however unique, of the individual and the group becomes important. The varying currents of the subculture that flow into the mainstream of our national life give it depth and beauty. We preserve a greater value than an ancient tradition when we protect the rights of Indians who honestly practiced an old religion using peyote one night at a meeting in a desert hogan near Needles, Colorado. Okay, Texas, same thing, 1967, Texas passed a total ban on peyote, and naturally the NAC that was their source for peyote. And David Takes Gun, put a motto up there. Takes Gun secured peyote from Amada Cardenas. She's Hispanic. She was the first licensed peyote. She's 68 years old there. She passed away 2 months before her 101st birthday. I gave the eulogy at her funeral. I gave Frank Takes Gun's eulogy up in Lodge Grass, Montana, overlooking the banks of the Little Bighorn, where General George Custer met his fatal fate. But Takes Gun arranged a test case, and Judge Kazin in Laredo, in the 92nd District Court, it was the 49. There's old Judge Kazin. We had he went in, they had a celebration at Amada's after he found the Texas law unconstitutional. The Indian, they put up a ceremonial teepee a couple months later. There's Judge Kazin. He goes in the teepee and eats peyote with them. He says it's curious tasting. There's his granddaughter. There's his wife. That's a sacred site in Texas. But they gave him that eagle feather and that peyote robe that he's wearing. Okay. That was the David Clark case. And upon learning of that victory, the BIA director wrote Frank Takes Gun a congratulatory letter. I have that original letter. There old Frank is. And then Humphrey Osmond, who you may be aware provided the mescaline to Aldous Huxley. But he was with the New Jersey Bureau of Neurology and Psychology. He wrote a letter to Frank Takes Gun. Again, I'm entrusted with that for the Native American Church. Humphrey Osmond said, "Congratulations on once again steering your church through the rapids. You have undoubtedly been a fine pilot for them. I still think of that remarkable time, or perhaps one should call it out of time, that we enjoyed together almost 12 years ago in the teepee on the bluffs of North Battleford. It remains one of the most vivid and rememberable experiences in my life. Okay. Let's talk about, we got just a few minutes here, the jurisprudence of peyote in the United States from 1990. There was a case, Sherbert versus Varner, in the United States Supreme Court 1963 case, written by Judge Brennan, that says the door of the free exercise clause stands tightly closed against government regulation of religious beliefs. In this highly sensitive constitutional area, only the gravest abuses endangering paramount interest give occasion for permissible limitation. The court established a balancing test. The law is heavily weighted toward freedom of religion. And if you're going to restrict it, there has to be an important public interest, and you have to use the most restrictive means. That was the compelling interest test. Well, in 1990, in shocking decision, Judge Scalia of the United States Supreme Court overruled the compelling interest test that had been on the books since, in a NAC case, I was involved in that, had been on the books for over 30 years. And he literally turned the First Amendment upside down, declaring that police power is superior to freedom of religion, because these men, well, anyway, he transformed our nation's first liberty into a constitutional stepchild. That's something we got to watch out for. A dark cloud hung over the continued religious use of peyote by the Native American church. We were forced to go to Congress as the last resort. Ultimately, there were a lot of churches that lobbied Congress and were very helpful to pass the Religious Freedom Restoration Act to restore the compelling interest test. But importantly, I crafted the strategy. There was no 1978 American Indian Religious Freedom Act passed by Congress, but it didn't include peyote specifically. I crafted the statute, presented it to Senator Inouye up in Oklahoma at public meetings. Boy, he was a native Hawaiian, had great sympathy for indigenous people, was respected and highly honored. He was able to marshal the amendment to the American Indian Religious Freedom Act, AIRFA, we call it. It was the AIRFA, and it was AIRFA. Anyway, with decorated World War II vision. There were Native Americans such as Reuben Snake, a Winnebago chief. He wrote a book. Reuben Snake wrote a book called Your Humble Servant. I got a kick out of that. It's a good book. Walter Echo Hawk, Oklahoma Pawnee, was the Native American Rights Fund out of Boulder. Got to give them a lot of credit. They knew the marble halls of Congress where I'd just been out getting poor Indians out of jail and that were being prosecuted for by law enforcement officers and didn't even understand the law. But actually, these two laws, AIRFA and the RFRA, were the basis for the Supreme Court case, Gonzalez versus the UDV. I was involved with that one. I knew old Jeffrey Brofman was a UDV. And the same's true of the Supreme Court case. And then there's a district court case out of Oregon, Holy Light Queen, that also involving ayahuasca. That was at Santa Daime. The other one was the UDV, Unhondo Está, in Portuguese. Okay. Oh gosh, I got 4 minutes. Pull up Anthony's picture, the old Pawnee. Anthony Davis, White Thunder. Oh gee, the experiences that I had with Anthony, Linda and I had. He lived with us for 12 years. I met him at a meeting out at Zetnal in the Navajo reservation. Again, he's Pawnee. There he is. He's holding this waterbird fan, holding his gourd there. Got on the mescal bean beads, but boy, I had a phenomenal, and it turns out I adopted him as my dad, and he was agreeable to live with us 12 years. We'd travel all around, boy, they wanted him in those peyote meetings, leading them otherwise. Wonderful old Pawnee. But he took me up to Oklahoma. He was ill when we brought him over to Houston. Linda lovingly nursed him back to health. Oh, he admired and loved Linda. But he wants to take me up to Hog Creek, Kiowa country. Virgil Franklin, old Arapaho chief, carried the medicine wheel for the Arapaho Sundance. Black Coyote, my uncle Virgil, Indian ways, led that meeting, Mother's Day meeting. And we were up there. It was a dark night. It was a dark night. And it was raining and thundering. Now, Anthony, you got to remember, he's White Thunder. And so that staff and the gourd got passed around to him, and that drummer's there close by with that water drum. And so Anthony's got his peyote box there. It's not this one. This is beautiful, beautiful, beautiful peyote box. There's that peyote button on the end there. But boy, it's raining. It's late spring rain there, Mother's Day. It's raining and raining hard. And Anthony says, he gets his box, he opens it up. His wife, Julia, they'd been married 49 years. She'd passed away 2 years later. She beaded a gourd for him to use. And that staff and that gourd come around to him, and he opens his box right between us. And says, I'm going to get this gourd out tonight, son. He said, I seldom get it out. He starts singing those old Comanche songs. I've never seen anything like this. All of a sudden, it is constant thunder. It's not it's not rolling thunder, it's constant thunder, it's constant lightning. The noonday sun, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, the lightning, it's as bright as the noonday sun. He sings 2 songs traditionally. You sing for, he stops for a minute, and then he sings 2 more. And same thing, that white thunder, that constant bright thunder and lightning. Then he stops singing. He passes the gourd that I was holding, not using, that went along with the staff, clockwise the way it goes in the meeting. And then I open this box for him. It's sitting right next to us, and I open his box where he put his gourd back in it, and our eyes lock. And I said, "Damn, that's powerful." He shakes that gourd like that, and white thunder. The old man told me where he got that name. I ran over, and I'm gonna turn things over. There's some many wonderful stories I'd like to share with you, but I'm gonna turn this over to Jim to help us out. Help us out, Jim.
Thank you, Jerry. Wow, what a tour de force. I'm sitting here absolutely amazed at your comprehensive knowledge of not only the spiritual aspects of peyote, but understandably, as an attorney for 50 years, you've been deeply immersed in the litigation successfully, I might say. And I want to applaud you and acknowledge that victory because it's not so easy going against the powers that be. I think the question that I would have is what motivated you as a young man to get involved in the Native American church? Did you experiment with peyote and realize that it was a extraordinary hallucinogen? How did that happen for you?
Well, Linda and I were citizens in the 60s, late 60s, of the Woodstock Nation. And, I think
we all were.
Yeah. And there was a complete new paradigm from dress, music, art, drugs, sex, the whole thing. Well, we got into all that. And I happened on a little mescaline. Oh my gosh, I had the Kundalini experience.
Yeah.
Just the total illumination and unity, knowing that I always am, and will be. And so I realized that it was the psychoactive component or spiritual active component. It's a very spiritual experience for me. And so the Native American Church could use peyote legally. And I'm a lawyer, and I want to stay within the bounds of the law. So I sought out, I found out about an annual meeting that occurs at a sacred site in Texas, and that was Amada's place, and Linda's Hispanic, raised by her Hispanic family, and speaks Spanish very well. They fell in love. I fell in love with Amada, the first licensed peyote dealer. She was put in jail way back there along with her husband, Claudio, but that got dismissed by the prosecutor, who was Judge Kazin, that later handled that David Clark case for takes gun and came out there and got the TP. But so we went down to South Texas, and she said, "Well, come down here when the Indians come." I said, "We don't know any Indians." And she said, "Well, you can be my guest." Amada did. And so, she was revered. So we walked up, her driveway, shy. And there's this Indian that comes out with his biggest smile, Rutherford Lone Man, and greeted us, a warm greeting. He said, "Let me take you into the teepee." There was a teepee set up. "Let me show you here." We sat out on that teepee outside on a railroad track. It was a cold February night, all night, and listened to that peyote meeting. Next morning, Rutherford comes out and said, "You know, I could feel you out there all night, and I believe you're looking for something good. I want you to come back next year." This is the very early 70s. "I want you to come back next year and come in there with us." And so that's how it started. And it's been foundational in my life. And
Well, I so respect that, because when I was just starting college, my first psychedelic experience was with mescaline and peyote. And those were the days when we were reading, Carlos Castaneda and his great adventures with Don Juan Matus and so forth. So I was very interested in this narrative today. And Humanity Rising, over the several years that we've been broadcasting, we really encouraged sessions and the use of these various psychoactives. And it's one of the really bright sparks in the culture now, that after decades of repression, many of the psychoactive plant medicines are beginning to be widely recognized as not only therapeutic for all kinds of issues, but also deeply healing for many, not only psycho-emotional, but physical diseases. And so the fact that you've kept the Native American church kind of alive and legally protected is one of the strands of the success story that psychoactive plants generally are experienced, because we're undergoing sort of, I would say, a renaissance in that whole domain. And so I really appreciate that your work with the Native American church has come out of your own personal experience of understanding the power of these plant medicines.
Yes, yes. I would comment right quick. I wrote a paragraph in the Ethnopharmacological Search for Psychoactive Drugs 2017, and I have it's got a lot of footnotes, references, and stuff like that. I can email that. The original one was 1967. This was 50 years later. Linda and I met in 67, the summer of love. So this was the 50th anniversary. The first one in 1967, before the drug war really got full steam, was supported by the U.S. Department of Health, Education, and Welfare.
The question that I would have, Jerry, given the fact that you were using sort of psychedelics sort of in terms of your personal exploration, and you've also had such a deep experience in the Native American church, how did you experience the difference between sort of the 60s generation that were experimenting with say LSD and psilocybin and mescaline, and the kind of the more rigorous contained experience within the Native American tradition? Was the effects the same? How did you experience those two domains?
You can throw joy tripping out the window.
Yeah.
you can throw it out the window. It is that ceremonial
Yes.
context, that that ritual in which you engage this psycho-spiritual ingestion. That is Rutherford said the men that put this together were brilliant. And it is that container, that focus, that prayer. And peyote's a phenethylamine, LSD, all the ayahuasca, the psilocybin mushrooms, they're tryptamines. And I find that the phenethylamines are less visual, profound yet, and there are visual effects and tactile and oral and, with all your senses, but that high speed visions coming from air, like can happen with the tryptamines. Well, maybe a matter of personal taste, but I think that the phenethylamines or peyote, are just much more settled. Not to say that on ayahuasca you can't engage in this self-reflection and this communal love and connection with nature. Sri Aurobindo, nature is secret life. Is secret God. This connection with nature.
But I think you're making a very profound point that these plants are optimally utilized within sacred ceremony.
Yes.
That when you use them promiscuously for party time, you can have experiences but miss the meaning. But in sacred ceremony, particularly with a ceremony going back thousands and thousands of years, as you've indicated is true for the peyote plant, I can just imagine that not only are you experiencing the plant, but you're experiencing the spiritual lineage.
Yes.
Yeah, well done. Well, Jerry, thank you so much. This has been informative at many, many levels, and I'm deeply grateful for your sharing your time. And it was through Jerry, everyone, that we were put in contact with Henrietta Mann. She was supposed to come on tomorrow, but she's had a health issue that she has to deal with. So we'll bring her in to talk about some of the massacres that took place in North America as the settlers were moving west. Jerry touched on them today, but we will not miss having Henrietta speak to her experience of that, and hope to have other practitioners of the Native American Church part of our program in the future. But we wanted to start with Jerry, who has really the sense of the history and has been the primary litigator that has preserved the independence and the sanctity of the Native American Church. So Jerry, thank you so much for sharing your time and deep experience and wisdom with us today. Much appreciated. Okay, everyone, that brings us to a close. You can join our after session chat group. The link has just been put in by Stan in the chat box, and we'll see the rest of you tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to, because Henrietta can't join us, we're going to be talking about men who are principally the source of the problems and the oppressions and the atrocities and the massacres, it's almost all done by men. So we're going to begin an exploration of what is the challenge of being a man. And we're going to be bringing in Jed Davis, who's been one of the leading lights of the men's movement for the last 50 years. So that'll be tomorrow on Humanity Rising. Thanks again, Jerry. Thank you all. See you tomorrow. Bye for now.